We have a couple of things to discuss. We want to discuss accessibility. Then we discuss the issue of design engineers, documenting design decisions, and then finally, the big updates that Figma did to UI 3. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Edge Cases podcast. This is actually our seventh episode. We have 6 episodes for you to binge on. We talked about stuff from nested modals to toasts and redesigns. We talked about hash feedback. We talked about balancing your day job with your dreams. And we did some hot take episode also. So yeah, after this, you can check the other 6 episodes out and leave a comment, leave a review, leave a like, download, play it at church, everything. Right, cool.
So accessibility is one of the hottest topics in design. Like when you put your design out there, you would definitely get comments like, this is not accessible enough. This is not accessible enough. So like, what is accessibility when it comes to design? Derek, what is it?
Accessibility is the name of a person. Okay, so accessibility in design is, it just means creating products that can be used by a wide variety of people. That's like on a very high level what accessibility is, right? So you consider various abilities or disabilities of the people and create design that all these people can use successfully, right? So things like making it easy for people who are visually impaired to use maybe social media products, not just limiting it to people who can see or see properly, but people who have issues with their sight. So now you have a wider bracket of people who can use the products because you've taken into consideration the accessibility of other people to the product, right? So that's on a high level what accessibility is. And this is very important in a lot of cases, right? Firstly, like I mentioned, it expands your product's user base. So now more people. So say you have 10 people who have 0 disabilities, and then you create a product for them, and you don't take into consideration maybe 5 people who have visual impairment. Now your user base is just 10, but then when you make your product accessible, you now have all those 5 people included. So now you have 15 instead of 10 because you have taken steps to include all those people in your product, right?
Let me backtrack on this a bit. You mentioned on a very high level that accessibility is making sure your design is available or anyone at all can use it. But in other contexts, devices count as as in devices are part of making products accessible. What do you think about that?
When you say devices, you mean they using it on specific devices or?
Yes, so your product your products being used on any device at all. Does that count as
Yeah, that
accessibility?
also counts as accessibility. Because normally when we talk about accessibility, people just look at disability, people look at
Yeah.
visual
Yeah.
impairments, they look at contrast and all those things. But then financial accessibility is also a key factor in making your design accessible. So
What is that?
I mean, if you tell me that you want to build an app for farmers in the northern region, right, and then your app is only available on Apple Play Store, that doesn't make sense. Your app is not accessible, right? You can have the best contrast, you can have the best screen reader implementation, you can have the best everything, but then it's only on Apple Play Store. How many farmers in the northern region, or how many farmers in remote areas? Sorry if you're in the northern region and you're offended. How many farmers in the remote areas have these devices that can access only Apple Play Store? Right. Some of them use YAM. The majority of them use YAM.
Yeah.
So financial accessibility is also key. You can't bank it on bank. You don't bank cannot afford your product.
Hit it again.
Bas. Right. So you can't bank their own bank if their own bank cannot afford your product. So you need to take into consideration all these things about your user and not just the in quotes the disability ability part of accessibility.
Do you
That's a
think
lot of ability.
products can be universally accessible? Like, can you make
Nah,
sure your product is 100% accessible?
no. It's very difficult and almost impossible because, for instance, let's take Apple.
Okay.
Apple adds a lot of things to their devices to make it attractive for people.
Mhm.
And that comes at a cost. Not everybody can afford an iPhone 16.
Okay.
It's expensive because it has things that the cheaper ones don't have. Right. Same thing
Yeah.
with the watch, with the Apple Watch. You can definitely go for a normal watch, but then the Apple Watch has things that you might like, and all those things also come at a cost. Same thing with, let's say, social media. If we want to include, we can include a lot of disabilities. We can include visual impairment. We can include people with cognitive issues and all that. But it comes at a cost of maybe user interface. It comes at a cost
Right.
of making the product attractive to the other users on the platform. Because if, let's say, we go full swing into 100% say we want to make the device 100% accessible to visually impaired users, people who are not visually impaired would have a bit of mixed feeling about the product because now
Yeah.
they feel you are excluding them,
Right.
right? And this brings the question: how far can we go with
And
inclusive design?
yeah.
Like, will we get to a point where we say, okay, we have included everybody? I think the answer is no.
So, like,
What do you think?
you think there's a balance we can strike?
Yeah,
Maybe what would that balance be? Or what would
we
that
have
balance
to.
look like?
We have to strike. And sometimes we end up offending some people, right?
So
The balance.
we can't please everyone.
No, no, we can't please everyone. And it also boils down to knowing who your users are.
All right.
Right. I mean, we say this all the time, know your
Yeah.
users, know your users. It boils down to that also. Because if you do some research or if you do a survey to see who your users are and you realize that 70% of your users are visually impaired, of course you prioritize their experience, right? Not
Right.
neglecting the other people, but then now you know that majority of your people are from XYZ demographic.
Like the
Uh
way Apple will never design for us here.
exactly. Apple will not come and say, well, because Abokobi has bad network, I should prioritize them over somebody in San
SF.
Francisco. Right. Yeah. Like some things are there, you know that this thing there, Enfa.
Yeah.
You you know that once you know who your users are, right. So same thing in products, you see that a lot of product pivots to B2,
Yeah.
right? So they move from B2C and then by the time they realize they pivoted to B2B. It's because
Okay,
they
so people who
realize
don't
that
know, can you like what is B2B? What does that mean? And what
oh
is B2C?
B2C is business to customer, B2B is
Okay.
business to business. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
This
like
is
Amazon
inclusive. This is an inclusive podcast. So let's keep that in
yeah,
mind.
sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, yeah, sorry. So you realize a lot of companies move to B2B because to B2B. Like I first move from B2B. No, they move to B2B because they realize majority of their customers majority of their revenue come from B2B clients.
Yeah.
So they just pivot. Right. And it doesn't make financial sense to stick with a group that does not bring you so much revenue, like financially speaking.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So basically, you can be accessible, but you should draw a line somewhere. You have to make someone happy. You can't make everyone happy. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Exactly. But
Make
then
me
there are some
happy.
there's some point that it becomes like you need that ethical responsibility
Okay.
to make your product accessible to people.
I'm sure that
Right.
is like one of the importance of
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's one of the importance because it's not every time you have to make your product accessible because of revenue. Sometimes you just need to do it because it's the right thing to do.
okay. Does any example come to mind?
Hmm.
If not, we can circle back. But
Yeah. So let's say you are opening your you are launching your product in Ghana. Let's say your
Okay.
product is a global product and you're launching in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
The right thing, though, one of the best thing to do is to have maybe an offline mode, just because it will help your product just because to help your users. Like, just because to help your users, not that it's going to add so much value to your product. It's just
Just
because
so
your
it
people,
helps your users.
yeah, just because it helps your users. Maybe a translation, something, a localization, all those things they are part of the cognitive side of things.
Okay.
Just to help your users, not necessarily that, it's to bring me revenue or to bring me more users or something. Just because it feels like the right thing to do. Right.
So I've done some reading on accessibility, and one of the importance is expands potential base, like you mentioned. Are there anything else that's like pretty
Yeah.
self-explanatory? The more, if you are able to attend to or provide your services to other user groups, you advert what's the word, like you you additionally increase your user base. So apart from that, are there any other importance to accessibility that we should look out for?
I mean, you still benefit other user groups by taking care of one particular user group. There are sometimes that is possible because look at Apple's feature. I'm using Apple a lot. Look at Android's feature where you can zoom in, zoom the text, make the text bigger. You realize that was there for people who cannot really see smaller text,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But then you see that people use it.
yeah.
The elderly use it.
Yes,
People who are
yes.
visually impaired, they use it. So by taking care of one group, you've taken care of multiple groups.
How so?
And
What
there's somebody
was
like
it?
me. It,
Okay.
uh
I wanted to ask, like, assuming with this example you've given of an older person using the zooming, how is
yeah.
taking care of that one user group, those older people, take care of others?
So now, if you have, let's say you, Franklin, you have a situation where you want to, for some reason, you want to zoom in. Do you have that feature available to you?
Right? I guess
Somebody
so.
who is visually impaired needs it. They have it available to them. Somebody who's
Makes
old
sense.
age needs it. They have it available to them. Even designers who want to test how their product looks like when people zoom in, they have that feature available to them. So
That makes
they
sense.
didn't just release it to one particular demographic, they released it to everybody. Everybody has the chance to use it. So now, if you are walking on the street of Makola one day and for some reason the village people decide to blind you, you can immediately increase the contrast on your, and then you can start using the screen reader. Right. So by helping one group, you've taken care of the future state of all the other people. That is why you can use a mobile phone for 10 years, because they have taken care of a lot of the things there are a lot of the needs that might arise in the future.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
right.
Otherwise, if you don't do that well, you only take care of your now, because you are so
And
now
that's
there
it.
my eyes are good, so I don't really need.
Yeah.
Ha.
Yeah.
Right.
I took an Uber a few days ago, and my driver he was pretty old, and
Mm,
I sent him the money via Momo, so he was checking
mhm.
his phone for the message, and I happened to see his phone sizes. My goodness. My goodness. So huge. Like the font sizes are so huge. And I'm like, this is like a very real or practical use case of how
Yeah.
that feature is
Yeah.
accessible to that user group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're not even thinking about them.
Yeah.
Sometimes
They
you're not
just
even thinking about them, but then you
yeah.
solve their problem. Right.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
must be a nice feeling to know that like you're not
Same thing.
particularly focused on a user group and then you do something and it actually helps them. Must be a nice
Yeah.
feeling.
I saw this on Twitter one day where you see the contrast mode on the phone, where you can increase the contrast so much that the
Yeah.
phone becomes literally black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter, and then somebody used it to stop a police officer from going through their phone. So what they did was they increased the contrast, it became black and white, and they turned I think the sepia something on. So the phone became like, you can't read anything. It looked like the screen had gotten spoiled. and then they zoomed in on the thing so much that it became like where you have to scroll a lot to get
So
to certain.
yeah,
So when the policeman got the phone, they couldn't operate it because
it's basically useless.
yeah. So as soon as they left, and then the guy moved the phone back to normal with some shortcuts, and I was like, yeah,
Wow.
you solved this guy's problem, even though
It wasn't meant to be
it
used
wasn't
like
meant.
that. Users will give you new use cases for the features you provide to them,
Yeah, you
right?
sit there and so the user will use the product this way. You're lying. You're lying.
I'm sure most of us have seen like all the memes that go around with some a product designer, UX designer observing how users actually use their product.
Serious,
Okay.
you be surprised how people use your product.
Yeah. Yeah. So we know what accessibility is. We know the importance that equates to the benefits of it. How do we go about making our products and designs accessible? What decisions do we have to pay attention to? Advise me. I don't know anything about accessibility. I don't know how to apply it to my designs. What do I do?
Hey, what kind of lie?
Inclusivity.
What kind of
Reminder,
lie is that?
please. Please. We are being inclusive here.
I mean, the easiest one we've talked about right now is the contrast,
Yeah.
right? That's like is a very low hanging fruit. Even for people who don't have visual impairments, you need to provide proper contrast for them, right? That's the easiest one. The other one is alt text. So alt text also doesn't help just people who use screen readers. It helps everybody. It helps
How
people
so?
who have bad internet.
Okay. Yeah.
It helps people who have bad internet. So you are somewhere at Agbogba and then your internet is messing up. And the images are not loading. You'd see the alt text there. Even though it wasn't designed for you, you are making good use of it. Right. So that's
Yeah.
also a key thing that happens. Any other?
Let me take you back to the old text. So in our
Mm,
designs, like as a designer,
mm.
how do I do that? How do I go
The alt
about
text.
that? Yes. For color contrast is pretty easy. Like I have to
Mm.
just make sure I choose my colors well. But for alt text, is it a designer's job? Is it my job?
Yeah, it is.
How?
Whose job is it? It's not your design.
It's isn't it tech like am I supposed to no, there's this thing think about it here. Assuming you something like Shopify for the images that okay, I think I've gone through there so they provide alt text. I'm looking for like how does the designer provide they okay, well I think I've answered my question. You have to make the avenue available for the user to provide an alt
Mhm,
text. If you don't
mhm,
do that, they can't provide an alt text in the first place. Medium does that very well. So I'm assuming if they don't have any avenue for providing alt text, it means their design
mhm.
won't be accessible for my readers if anyone is reading my article. Right.
Yeah.
So it's more like we should allow for alt text in our designs. If someone is uploading
Yes.
image, if your design is saying someone should upload an image, provide the text field
Yeah.
on alt text.
Alt
Yeah.
text. Yeah. And
Oh,
even
mommy,
if you
inclusivity here.
even if you don't offer that, you should the context should be enough to derive alt text from. Because if you ask somebody to upload their profile picture,
Mhm.
you don't necessarily need them to enter alt text profile picture. You know that
Okay.
that picture they're uploading is a profile picture. So that context alone can be an alt text that okay, by default, the
Okay.
alt text
Okay.
for that to be
A
profile picture.
profile picture. Right.
Ah,
Yeah, I get it.
then even for places where we do that's not user generated content, you could come up with alt text for that. Maybe your landing page. Your landing page is not content that the user has generated, right? So with
Mm-hmm.
that one, you can have alt text for your hero section
Yeah.
image. That oh, okay,
Yeah.
image of a girl smiling at a mobile phone,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because those ones are not necessarily user generated.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think I asked my question. I've answered it. You've helped me. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So another best practice that is very common is form elements. A typical example is the input field with a label.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine an input field without a label. Oh, well, it's a thing, but I don't think it should be a thing because then it won't. it doesn't work well. Practically, it doesn't work well because
Yeah.
without the label, what is the field? When I start typing, are you counting on my ability to remember that I know what I'm typing? What if for some reason someone distracted me and I don't know what I'm typing anymore? So I have to clear everything to go and see the placeholder. So it's just best practice. Just allow or give your info fields, your form fields labels. That's like one of the most common, again, low hanging fruit. You shouldn't forget that. Even if
Yeah.
you see a very big application or big software doing otherwise, that shouldn't give you enough reason to just say maybe this person is
Yeah,
doing so I
pressure.
can do it. No, no, no. Right. So it's good, it's accessible, it's good practice to label your form fields. Right. So I see something or I hear, right? Semantic HTML stuff, those things, I don't know those things, but those also help with accessibility. Do you have any idea?
Yeah.
Since you've been dabbling in
Please,
HTML
please, please,
and
please,
stuff.
please, please, please. So this helps screen readers a lot. So if you label your code very well, and then it's okay, this is the H1, this
Okay.
is a link, this is a button, this is not a card. So if you label them very well in your HTML, it's easier for the screen reader to go through it and read it properly.
So if I
So
leave it
imagine,
as div, will it say with us?
uh,
Okay.
if you leave it at div, it's just a random
Div.
div can be anything. You can use a div to create a button. You can use a div to create a paragraph. You can use a div to anything, right? So if you don't label it well, so this as use the as equals, and then you or row. I'm I don't remember which one exactly is for this, but if you label it very well as a header, as
Yeah.
a heading, or as H1, or as button, or as link, now the screen reader goes through, and the screen reader can say, okay, title is this, description is this, button is this, right?
Okay.
But if everything is a div to you,
So
the
just
screen
reading
reader is
div,
just,
div, 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 div,
yeah,
div.
and whoever is using the screen reader is not going to properly understand what you are going through, right? And yeah, this also helps for your SEO too. It's not just for
Yeah. Yeah.
accessibility. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear. Okay. Any more best practices you can share with us?
Captions and transcripts. So when you're watching YouTube, and there are some people who can watch YouTube and Netflix without the captions.
Me. I like
Yeah.
I can't watch videos without captions unless they are not available. I have to make do. But if it's available, captions are on.
You know what I heard about people who like captions?
Don't tell me.
They don't listen to advice. So yeah, provide captions and transcript for your audio and video content, because not everybody can follow exactly what you are saying in real time. Some people like to read. It helps a lot for people who they have hearing issues,
Mhm.
right? They can read it better. It helps for following what you are following the dialogue too,
Yeah.
right? It helps following the dialogue too, because sometimes you are just looking at the video and you might be distracted by some things, but some people just look at the text and then they be following. Sometimes I wonder how our minds do that though,
As in
because
watching a movie and then reading the
yeah,
captions,
yeah,
it's amazing. I
because by the time
well,
you finish, yeah, you would
you
remember everything.
understand. Yeah.
It's weird. It's really weird how the brain works
Yeah.
on that.
Okay. And then the last I know of is keyboard navigation. I'm not a power user when it comes to
You know what I had?
what?
Keyboard navigation. Please go on.
The last best practice I'd like to mention is keyword navigations. I'm pretty sure almost everyone has used tabs to like select items. That's the most common keyboard navigation apart from up and like using the arrow keys if you
Yeah.
can. But even if the site doesn't allow for up and down, you can use your tab. If you haven't tried it, like just go on any site and try using the tab. You'd see that it would select some things that you should select. I think that is done on the developer side, right? As in the
The
developer
keyboard
has to,
navigation. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you can nudge your developers to apply or like use that? Apply that, turn it on. I don't know if it's in the code you have to turn it on.
No, I think it's on by default, but it depends on how you arrange your elements on your screen. So
Okay.
that when you hit the tab, it's moved from one to the other. It moves from the
Yeah.
H1 to H2. Otherwise, you hit tab and then you're in your footer.
Right. So just nudge your developers to use the well, as in they should use the well. Okay. So this is like a very holistic, in-depth knowledge of accessibility.
I
Is it difficult to trying to make your designs accessible? Is it difficult? Like practically?
Yeah, because you have to consider multiple things.
Like what?
You have to balance aesthetics with the accessibility requirements. Because
I
to be
think
frank, accessibility is not.
that like punches on the point you made about if you are serving everyone with every disability, it affects how your interface will look
Yeah,
like. Yeah.
yeah. Because accessibility itself is not that pretty. Because you have to do a lot of hand holding, you have to do a lot of backdoor, like take care of a lot of things that happen in with various edge cases, right? And sometimes it disrupts whatever pretty flow that you have in your right.
Yeah.
Imagine you finish designing a very nice screen and then somebody comes to tell you that 10% of your users cannot see after 30 centimeters of the like they can't see 30 centimeters away from the screen. Now, whatever nice designing codes that you have,
You
you
have
have to
to.
enlarge the things. And
Yeah.
you now have to find a way to make sure the design is pretty, even though it is enlarged. Right. This is an assignment for designers listening or devs. Whatever app that you designed or whatever thing that you designed, open it on a device and zoom into it, like zoom into the maximum zoom you can do on your device and see how ugly it looks. Yeah, see how ugly it looks. That's what some of your users are seeing. Right. So sometimes it's not pretty at all. So you'd have to balance it. You'd have to balance that very beautiful animation that you want to do. You have to sometimes
Tweak it
swap it with an
or
image.
remove it entirely because
Yeah,
it's giving somebody, I don't know,
internet
attacks
issues.
or something.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to just make compromises. So it's sometimes very difficult balancing the aesthetic with accessibility requirements. Right. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Derek, for this extensive knowledge sharing on accessibility. For inclusivity, it helped me. I don't have like in-depth knowledge on it. So for me and for everyone who is like me, thank you.
So on today's on social segment, we want to talk about a growing opinion among founders and other designers even about designers coding, right? It revolves around designers coding. And with the emergence of AI, this has been like very easy for designers to get into. So we have a lot of designers getting into code, a lot of designers like Franklin are building their first to do app
Oh my
and
goodness.
stuff with the help of AI, right? So with this, with every good thing comes some questions or some opinions or some changes to the lives of the people already existing in it. And one of them is from a tweet from the founder of Gumroad. Franklin, how did you see that tweet?
Yes, I saw it. I'm a big fan of Gumroad and Sahil. Sahil is the CEO of Gumroad.
Hey,
I'm a
you're
big
on
fan
first
of
name
what he's
basis with
doing.
him.
Yes, I'm on a first base,
Hey,
first name basis with him. Like we
nice,
are like
nice.
that. Like I send him, we chat in the DMs and all that. But
Hey, oh wow. We thank God for
so he just basically tweeted, I'm going to quote him: "We are no longer hiring designers, only design engineers." And this is where I have a problem with him because
uh,
on the surface, he's making it he's making the design role very trivial. Like anyone,
um,
of course, anyone at all can become a designer, but it's not for one role. I mean, when I say that, I mean it's good for a developer to have some product sense, some design sense. It's fine, but then when you give the entirety of a design role to a developer, it's I don't I don't see. Well, companies do that, but for him to go to that extent, like to proclaim it that we are like he's no longer hiring. He's essentially telling other founders that maybe designers are not as important as we think. We
Mm,
should just let the
right.
developers, just let us tell them what we want, and then they will do everything. Again, I'm not saying developers can't do that. I'm just
Right.
saying he's trivializing the role of a
Right.
designer in the whole process of building products, building a company. So
Yeah.
I really don't agree with him. Right.
Did you see this coming, or was this very obvious coming? Like this would come one day to designers.
it it has always been there, if I should say. It has always been there, that like it's been there. It's something that we don't say, like the way we all say designers should know
Mhm.
how to code.
Yeah.
It's like that, something like that. But I won't say I was surprised. I was just not expecting it from him, because he has a very loud voice on social media, because Gumroad is really doing well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he has that voice. So
He's
to say
influential.
that, I'm just hoping that one day he just doesn't come back to eat his own words. Well, if he does, it's good, because then he has he saw some light and he has turned off that light. So so yes, so me, I don't agree. It's good if designers and developers have some knowledge of design, like the whole process of, but
Yeah.
to say you are getting rid of that role in your company, you will pay dearly for it. I hope he doesn't. I want to be wrong, honestly. I want to come back in a year, maybe a year is far, because AI is really doing things. So I want to
Mm.
come back 6 months and come and say, oh, it's actually true. Like, companies don't need me to be designing their product. A design engineer should. But then let me ask you, who is a design engineer? Is there a designer who codes? Is there an engineer who designs? Like, who is a design engineer?
This it's a very subjective example. It's a very subjective term
Yeah.
because it it started out, I believe, at least when I first saw the term, it started out with designers or with engineers who can do those creative style of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So you see some of the creative engineering where
Like skirmishes to the design, like the
yeah,
button is
they do
floating and breaking
exactly.
apart, and
Exactly. That was one of the first times I encountered the term, right? So some people say creative coding
Mm.
because like the engineer has an eye for design,
Yeah.
right? But then now that a lot of designers have gotten into it, it has now looked like, or it is now looking like designers who have now learned how to code, right? But then that also brings a question in my mind: what if I'm a designer and I learn backend engineering? Am I a design engineer?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
the engineering is not just the front end. It's not
Front
just
end,
HTML,
no.
CSS with small JavaScript animations here and there. So if I'm a product designer and I learn Python and I start building my own APIs or I start building my own backend systems, am I a design engineer? Given
Good
I'm not
question.
building front end stuff,
Yeah.
right? So this is a very subjective term, and I agree with like a lot of like everything you said about trivializing their role because it now looks like designers just do
Rectangles.
exactly. But then that's not the only thing designers do. I've said this multiple times that it's looking like designers are the only ones that have to always prove their
Exactly.
worth in a company. And this, even though I like designers who like to explore code and the rest, this makes it feel like another version of designer need to prove their worth within a company again. Because nobody is asking engineers to start designing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's asking PMs to start designing. Nobody's asking whoever to start designing.
Designing.
And then everybody's expecting, or at least from this tweet, we know founders are now expecting designers to code, and it doesn't sit well with me, because what if we also start saying, okay, engineers should now start, because if engineers struggle with CSS, how much more they design itself?
Hey, you are shooting some shots.
Right, how much more they design itself? So this, I replied it to, like, it's a very slippery slope.
Oh, you replied to it.
Not him directly. Somebody screenshotted the design chief free. He screenshotted the tweet and was agreeing with it, but I quoted it and I
What
was
did
like,
he
this.
say?
Uh,
If you can just
no, I don't know. I don't remember the exact tweet
okay.
he made, but it was in agreement with this about how I think designers need to learn, how designers need to realize the need for diversifying this one skill, something around that side.
Because that, like,
Um,
I think we most of us are, how do I say this? We are buying into the idea that if I'm a designer, I have to do something else. Why can't I just be a designer and a
it's
designer
the
only?
culture. It's the culture. It boils down to everybody expecting designer to justify their inclusion. It's the culture. It's the culture. Why can't, I mean, I get it that, okay, we have to explore other things, but why can't I be a designer
Why, yeah, why can't,
and
because
and
I'm
do
just a designer. In as much as I try to, get some knowledge in the technical side of things, I'm not killing myself to get there. It's a nice to have for me. It's a nice to have
mm,
skill. I'm a designer and a designer only. If you want to explore, please feel free. But just that saying that says um jack of all trades, master of none.
um,
It's very real. Like you are doing everything and nothing at the end of the day. So don't let
mm,
anybody put pressure on you to go and do something just because they think is right. Just listen
mm.
to you. I mean, my philosophical elements.
Also look at the areas you want to enter. So while you, like, make sure you are doing what is making you happy, but then also look at the rooms you want to go into, because as this has started now, you realize Vessel is hiring design engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've seen a lot of companies hiring
The
design
design
engineers now,
engineers.
and that's how it starts. Right, that's how it starts. It
Oh,
starts from
well,
one company or one founder being vocal about it.
so you're
Then every
saying what you're trying to say is we might get to a
we
time
might
where designers
we
there won't be anything as just being a designer. There has to be something attached to
there's a
being a
there's
designer.
a possibility. There's a possibility. There's a possibility, because this is not the first time a trend has started in tech hiring. This is not the first time a trend has started, because there was a time companies were hiring UX designers
Yeah,
for, like, people who understood the rudiments of user experience, people who had the master's degree in user experience to actually come up with solutions and the rest. So remember, the ideals, some
yeah.
of the people who thought about user experience from a theoretical, like, an
Standpoint.
academic point, yeah, an academic standpoint. So people they'll be talking about design from an academic point of view, and you realize that, oh, these people, they know what they are doing, but then their UI is not as good,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
there's been a shift from that to people who have, maybe, probably, sorry to say, terrible UX, like,
But very nice
but very,
UI.
yes. And then this is because the founders want to control the thinking of the
Yeah,
designer. So now, instead of allowing the designer to create the experience themselves, they bring somebody who can create beautiful things, and then the founder does all the thinking, right? So there have been multiple shifts in the hiring trend of designers, right? And
right.
I feel this is one of them. And you don't know which one might stick. You don't know which one might stick. If for some reason this one might stick, that
Scary
will be
times
hiring,
ahead.
yeah. But
So
then,
are you saying I should
mhm,
learn engineering? I should. What are you telling me right now? Since I just want to be a designer. With this, what are you telling me?
you should be ready for anything. You should be ready for anything. Not necessarily to become a full engineer. Nah, just I advise people to maybe just learn something about code. I'm not expecting to code anything. If somebody copies and pastes some HTML snippets for you, you should be able to interpret it.
Okay.
That should be like the basic. You should be able to interpret some CSS. Right? I'm not saying you should be able to build a full dashboard with AI integration and then what. Nah, just the basic. Something to get you into conversations. Something that when an engineer is bullshitting you on stand up, you'll be able to recognize that this person's lying. Something, just something to make conversation, right? But
They
then,
say
if you want to be a designer, just focus on being the best designer. If you are a very good designer, nobody's going to ask you
take
to
that
do
away from.
anything. Yeah,
Okay.
nobody's going to ask you to do anything that, oh, I need you to code. Nah, right? Just yeah, it's a trend, but let's see how far it goes.
I hope we can come back in a few months, in a few years to this very topic, and it would have changed, as in
Oh, we will,
something would
we
have
will.
changed about it.
Haven't you realized we are in a time where there's a lot of buzz around stuff. So, for instance, look at AI.
Yeah.
So when ChatGPT came, it was the king of everything, right? Then as time went on, we had Perplexity. Then we
Yeah.
had other ones. Now we have Claude. Now then we had code editors, AI code editors. We had VS Code with GitHub Copilot.
Pilot.
Then we had some other ones with Copilot plus what. Then we had Keza.
Kesa.
You see the hype that Keza came with. Now
Yeah.
ChatGPT, OpenAI has released something Canvas.
Yeah, so
We
I
are in a
heard.
yeah, we are in a time where there's a lot of trend, and this might, with an asterisk, this might be one of them. But let's see how far it goes.
Do you know ever since Figma released oh yeah, released their new UI, I haven't received it. Okay, I have, but like I use my personal account more and I don't have it on
Mm,
there. And
you don't have it on your
initially,
personal account.
yeah, I don't have it on my personal. I have it on my work account, but I don't have it on my personal. Initially, I felt left out because everybody was just going on about how it was nice. And then after a while, when the whole niceness of it subdued and people used it, that was where the backlash was coming. I was like, okay, maybe it's good I don't have the updates yet. Then I got it on my work account and I understood them. I was doing, hey, where is this? How do I do this? Like before I design, when the first I had to design something very simple, I was like, I was looking for everything. I don't know if it's as expected. I don't know if they expected that
Mm,
behavior, but I think it was too extreme for me to
yeah,
look
yeah.
for very simple things. I think that learning curve they expected, I don't know, it was a stretch. So I don't like it. I got um I was using some other accounts and then I said I got access to I quickly switched back to the old UI. I didn't even use it. Like as soon as I saw the welcome, they have this modal that is yeah, I closed it, went down there, switched back to the old UI and yeah, I don't like it. I really don't like it.
The change was too big. The change was too big. If it was small incremental changes, that would have been better or that would have been cooler. But we just woke up. I got the new UI on the day it was released.
Me
So
go you.
imagine my frustration because
Yeah.
everything was different. The constraints was a different place. Clip content was now a drop down instead of and yeah, I mean you could give them the benefit of the doubt that okay, that was the first release of the new UI, but it was too big. It
It
was
was
too big
too
and
big. I
it's
think it was nice. When they were demoing it
oh
on
yeah, it's
Compay, it
nice.
was
It's a nice
really
yeah,
nice. So like you are eager to use it and that is a clear example of you can do the best design but come up with a shitty experience. I'm
true.
sorry, but
And
I don't like the experience with the new one.
yeah.
Especially I have to find
Even
the main thing is I have to find certain things. Even up until today, in my work account, if I'm doing something, I'm still looking. It's like it's just not sticking. I'm finding it
Sure.
very difficult to stick to this new change. Like,
And even
I,
this can be a lesson to everyone that a bad experience in your product might not be from the design. It might be from how fast you want users to adapt.
say
Right.
that again
So
and then
the
explain.
Figma UI itself, it's not a bad design. Like it's nice. The
No,
new
no.
UI is nice.
Yeah.
But then the bad experience we are getting from it is not because of the design. It's because of how quickly we are expected to relearn the tool.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So imagine the first time you got into Figma and then the new UI is what you okay, let's imagine you are now getting into design. Would you
Mhm.
say you would experience the same thing learning this tool that you're experiencing right now as you've used this tool for years and now they've
No.
overhauled everything?
No, no, no. I think it'd be
So
okay.
uh, you blink your
Yeah.
so now the bad experience is not necessarily from the design being bad. It's from the change management that Figma is doing. Right. Because you can't just wake up like the day I open a new one, like I saw,
And I'm
okay,
like,
this
hey,
design is nice. The design is beautiful. But then I need
you start
to
using it and
exactly the number of times I've wanted to go and change the width of a frame.
trust
And
me,
I'm like,
that thing is always getting me. It's
and,
always getting me. Like, I have
and
to hover to see if this is fixed,
which one?
or I have to hover before I'm able to identify if I really wish they would go in, it would give us, well, it would give the designers some understanding if they had like a session where they really went in depth. I know they have like blog post articles as to how they went
Yeah,
about it, but I think an in depth so that we can appreciate, because I feel like it's nice, but we don't appreciate the work because the experiences. What did they expect? Like, what did they
yeah.
expect?
The change
And then
management was
how is it
terrible.
like? Yeah,
The change
cause
management was
if
terrible.
like you said, if they had incrementally released it, it would be better. Like today, we see that the where we have the constraints has changed. Fine.
Mhm.
Where we then you just keep increasing it like that, so it all till you get to where you want it to get to. Well, maybe you could say releasing it incrementally to maybe it didn't work well. I don't know, but they could
Well,
have it.
maybe they had
Maybe they debated on it. It was a round table,
maybe
and
maybe they
Dylan
had
and Co
constraints.
came to
Yeah, but I felt we could have maybe thought of a better solution because the people who spend their lives every day trying to make other people's the people who spend their lives every day trying to make other people's experience good in other apps
yeah,
now find themselves not
enjoying
like
it. Yeah,
yeah,
like
right. And it's that way because you'll be going to create a component and then you click on clip like a merge or those that clip masking thing, or you want to create component sets. The first thing I use is I have to look for where I will change the name of my file. I have to look.
up until now, like I still look up there for the old
Yeah,
UI
yeah,
has
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I still my instinct is just to send my mouse there before I'm like, okay, let me
yeah.
just move down and I'll find them there.
Yeah.
I
You know,
I like
one
the whole idea of the floating panels, but
oh
practically I don't like it because they are my design. So I have to move it's fine if I know it's fixed. Like if it's
yeah.
fixed, I know like my mind sort of accepts it, acknowledges that fixed stance. But as soon as it's floating on it, it feels weird. Like it just gives off this. I can't explain it. I don't know if everybody can explain it in the comments, but if you can, please do.
No, it's more of the space, the illusion of it's more of the illusion of space. Right. So if the panels are closer to the edge or the panels are at the edge, you have a better like view of the space. That you have a
Yes.
better assumption of the amount of space you have. But
Mhm.
then if you see if you see space at the edges and then you see the side panel before you see your design, the perception of space that you have is smaller because now you are seeing that the panels are now part of the screen instead of at the
Yeah.
edge. Yeah, so I think it's one thing that Figma failed to like realize, but in this new updates they've made, they fix that,
Yeah, I
and it
like
helps a
I
lot.
I like the turnaround, like listening to the feedback that is coming, something
Did they
like
have a
the clip content.
did they
I'm
have a choice?
they could have said we've done it and that is it. But I would have given users, uh, or they would have given themselves out for their users to say, oh, Figma, they don't listen to us. Yeah, we're holding a design product that where feedback is very key and you're not listening, all of that. So I think they did well by working on some of the feedback they've received, and a
Mm,
lot of it being the floating panels. So now everything is just recent. I think it's just yesterday or 2 days ago. I'm sure they'll release it slowly, but
mm,
they've gone back to fixing their panels, keeping the new UI, but fixing the panels. Right. So
mm,
I'm sure as time goes on, we'll be getting a few of our old UI elements and patterns on Figma back. I really do hope they do that. Right. I
mm.
really do hope they do
I
that.
don't even use the floating, the bottom one.
I I don't. For some weird reason, when I search for a plugin or a component, I have to go to the component tab to find it. Because if it's in all, I don't see it. I don't know if I'm not the one using it well. I want to say I'm not using it well, but
Yeah,
it's
I
not
use the
working the way
shortcut.
I want it to work.
I use the shortcut in the
Okay.
keyboard arrow keys.
Is it okay? Well, like I said, me, I'm not a keyboard power user
Uh
because I'm really not. I suck at it.
so
Right.
when those actions were on the top bar or on the top part of the screen,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel like an external thing to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I use the shortcuts a lot.
Oh, okay.
So now that it's at the bottom and at the middle, I see it every time.
It's like in your
It's in
face.
my face, but I don't use it.
You should could like toggle it or something, turn it
Yeah.
off or
So
hide
if
it, or
Figma could add, let's say, a handle so that we could
they can
move
drag
it
it.
out of the way. Yeah. So that I could move it out of the way. That would help a lot. Because right now I don't use it. Even for the comment, text, the shapes, I don't use all that. And now it's in my way.
Huh.
So Figma, if you are listening,
We should write an
give
open
us a
letter to
way.
Figma.
Yeah, give us a way to drag that bottom thing because a hard dream, it is high in our mind.
Please bombard our comment section with this specific segment. Like, what do you think about the Figma UI? If you've used it or if it's accessible to you, what do you think of it? What do you think the experience is like for you? Just share anything at all. And I'm pretty sure next week we can, you know, beat it out for us all to go through. I had an amazing time talking about accessibility, like going in depth into it. Derek walking us on that road. I had an amazing time discussing what it means to be a design engineer and what that whole buzz means for designers. And then the new Figma updates. This has been a short but long episode. So if you are here at the end, thank you. And don't forget to leave your comments. Like, again, your comments are precious to us because that way we know if what we are doing is working the way we want it to work and you are learning just like the way we are learning. So, thank you very much for making it this far. Thank you for staying up until the 7th episode. Thank you. So we are going to see you next week, same time on the Edge Cases podcast. Derek, do you have anything else to say?
Bye bye.
Bye.